Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. So it has been a minute since I have recorded anything, and that's partly because when I have the energy and interest, I don't have the time, and when I have the time, I don't really have the energy. So it's something I'm working on, or not really, I guess, since haven't really been staying on top of things. But anywho, I realized that I had rather fallen behind on my recent reads, and my friends on Instagram were pretty split on whether or not I should do one big recap kind of video or if I should try to do multiple smaller videos. So because this is my channel, I'm going to do both. Okay, so right now this video is going to be one big recap through the end of February, all of March, and the first few books that I read in April. A number of books I read in April. And then I'm going to try to catch up with a recent reads coming soon with the sort of second half of April. And then I will hopefully, fingers crossed, be caught up and can kind of jump back into things for May. So let's just dive right in to the books that I have read this year that I have not yet spoken to you about. So at the end of February, I'm referring to my notes just off camera, so enjoy my lack of eye contact. At the end of February, I continued my reread of the Earth's Children saga series by reading the fourth book, which is Plains of Passage. This is by Jean M. Auel, and like I said, is a reread and is the fourth book in the series. So we continue to follow our main two characters of the series. Ayla is the main female character. She's the main character, and her love interest in this book. And in this book, it's the Plains of Passage. They are traveling from one end of the continent to the other end of the continent, and we cover a year as they trek their way to Jondalar's homeland. There is a lot of not great written sex scenes. They meet a lot of people who are essentially pointless to the plot and are relatively forgettable. Ayla is still the absolutely perfect female specimen, and Jondalar is still whiny and the perfect male specimen, and he still has blue eyes. So overall, this is way too long. All the books in the series are very long. It's boring. All of the books read very much so as an anthropological and botanical academic text. And if you can't stand that, then you'd never make it in the series, let alone to book 4. The writing of the sex scenes in these books is very like metaphorical and purple and like gets to be kind of cringy. Ayla is very much like a perfect, flawless character, a Mary Sue. Jondalar can be kind of a controlling jerk sometimes and really annoyed me. So even though I was annoyed and bored throughout most of this book and it's a reread, I still, for some reason, there is something here. I can't put my finger on this quality, but I want to keep reading. And here in May, I have already picked up the next book, book 5. So I don't know what that says about me. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. This is the second book in the Bridgerton series, and I listened to the audio of this in preparation of the second season of Bridgerton's coming out on Netflix. So the brief summary is that Anthony is our Bridgerton in this book, and he is, I don't know, like, he's a lord, and he is determined that this will be the season where he takes a wife. He kind of arbitrarily declares that he will take the woman who is the diamond of the season to be his wife. He just kind of has a few qualifications, but otherwise doesn't really care. He has zero interest in falling in love or making a love match. Kate is Edwina's sister, and Edwina has been declared the diamond of the season, and there's no way that Kate will let Edwina have a rake of Anthony's level anywhere near Edwina. And so there's like plot that happens to keep putting Kate and Anthony together. They have sort of tension, and then when they are caught in a compromising position, they must marry, but at least they're friends and they already have this attraction kind of together. So they both kind of have to work through childhood trauma as they fall in love by the end of the book. So my problem with this is that I just didn't like Anthony. Like liked Anthony in the show better. I do feel like the book makes him a bit more of a complex character, especially compared to what we saw in the first book. But I felt like he was just a jerk throughout the whole thing. He's very imperious. He's very demanding. He's like an alpha, but like in this disdainful, aristocratic kind of way. And I felt like Kate started out as a fiery person and sort of rebellious, but she kind of loses that spark, in my opinion. So I did understand that they both have trauma that they're bringing to this potential relationship, but I just didn't really care what those traumas were, and I didn't really like how that was written, and I just felt like those were both kind of too easily dismissed and like tied up in a bow instead of actually discussing sort of long-term resolutions or problems to those traumas. So didn't love this installment of the series. The next book that I read, I actually thoroughly enjoyed. This is Red at the Bone. The author is Jacqueline Woodson. I listened to this book for a book club, and it's kind of hard to explain. It is a character study on a variety of different kinds of love, and we follow multiple different point of views of three generations of this family. The blurb, I think, does a good job describing this, so I will just read this quote straight from the blurb. It says, this is what the book's about. Unfurling the history of Melody's parents and grandparents to show how they all arrived at this moment, Woodson considers not just their ambitions and successes, but also the costs, the tolls they've paid for striving to overcome expectations and escape the pull of history. As it explores sexual desire and identity, ambition, gentrification, education, class and status, and the life-altering facts of parenthood, Red at the Bone most strikingly looks at the ways in which young people must so often make long-lasting decisions about their lives, even before they have begun to figure out who they are and what they want to be. So this is a literary fiction, sort of character-heavy story, and I wasn't really in the mood for that when I first started this book, but it was a book club book. But I was intrigued by how complex all the characters were, and I felt that was very realistic. And Iris, in particular, is a character. I really enjoyed her storyline, and I enjoyed all the different narrators that were used for the audiobook. I felt like the writing was well crafted enough to evoke emotion, but not like over dramatic and yanking on my heartstrings. So I just really enjoyed this story, and I liked that we were able to sympathize with one character while in their point of view, even if they were being really judgy of the other people in a realistic way, and then that would be the next person's point of view, and I would be sympathetic with them. So this one really hit home. I really enjoyed the character heavy elements to it. In the last about 10 days of February, I read the first 5 books in the Stolen by an Alien series. This is by Amanda Milo, and I read all 5 of them on Kindle Unlimited. I did a video all on its own of those 5 books, and I will link it up in the cards here, I think. I'm not sure. So check out that video for my thoughts on the first 5 books in that series. So in March, the first book I finished was Only When It's Us by Chloe Liese. I listened to the audiobook of this, and the summary is that Willa is our main female character, and she is trying to be amazing at soccer. She's going to college. She's handling her mother, who is sick, who has cancer, and Willa is paired with Ryder for a class. And at first, Ryder hides that he is hard of hearing or has hearing loss, and it causes a lot of tension between the two of them. And then as they become closer working together for this class, he starts to consider treatment for his hearing loss, and he begins to come out of his shell, and they start to develop feelings, though Willa is extremely reluctant to trust or be open or be vulnerable. This is a contemporary romance, sort of sports romance elements, and frenemies to lovers. I feel like there's a lot of emotion packed into this contemporary romance, more so than I had been expecting. But Willa was so untrusting and like unvulnerable and closed off that it became frustrating to read at times. And another frustrating element was that both of the main characters wanted the other character to open up first. They would figure something out and then read into that really unnecessarily and think, well, why haven't they shared that with me? Why hasn't he shared that with me? I was a little confused as to the hard of hearing elements. Like, why did Ryder never try to learn to sign or like deal with his hearing loss in a different way? You know, I can't really speak to that rep there. And then I do agree with some of the reviewers that were saying that like frenemies was really pushed, but not quite a strong enough element to call this book an enemies to lovers. And I will note that this has strong content warnings for death of a family member, a very close family member. The next book I read in March was Alien Quarantine Rescue by author Robin Lovett. I first heard about this book series from Kazen over at Always Doing. I will link her channel up in the cards and down in the description. But this book is kind of wild. It is a apocalyptic setting after a big virus has swept through the earth, and the virus is called Birona. So the humans are all isolated because the way you get sick is when you're in contact with another human. And our main female character, Ellie, is really lonely, and she's very touch-starved. And then this like alien spaceship lands in her front yard, and she pretty much immediately has dramatic sex with this like metal alien person that comes out of the spaceship. Then she freaks out because she thinks she might have now contracted Birona, but then he like downloads English from her laptop and convinces her he's an alien and that his fluids are full of the antibodies that she needs. So there's a lot more plot that just gets, that's just dumb. This is a wild ride. It's a bonkers ride. You have to completely suspend 100% of your disbelief. This, in my opinion, is porn without plot. It is erotica that's disguised as a romance. I say that because there's not any buildup of a relationship. There's no getting to know you kind of conversations. The characters felt really cardboard to me. It doesn't really make any sense why these two like would fall in love, and we don't get to see any of that emotional development. So my frustration was that there was a lot of like anxiety and unknowns and fear of dying and grief and loneliness, and like these were like mentioned and then drowned out by all of the fluids, by all of his cum, which was sparkly and delicious and contained all the antibodies. This is an alien romance full of insta-love. It's smutty smut. It has a surprise baby. There was also some like pronoun errors that happened later in the book, so I definitely think it could have used another run through with an editor, but it was just a wild bonkers ride. I'll just leave it at that. And I wanted a different type of alien romance after that, so I went back to a tried and true series. I read Barbarian's Redemption by Ruby Dixon. This is the 13th book in the Ice Planet Barbarians series, and I listened to this on audio and continuing the series. In this installment, Beck is our main male character, and he has made arrangements for human women to be brought to the planet, but he doesn't understand the significance that those brought have been purchased by him as slaves. And our main female character, Ellie, is one of these purchased women, and she is super untrusting of everyone on this planet and in this situation she's finding herself in, and she like resonates to Beck very shortly after she arrives at the planet, and she is very untrusting of him, and that is a lot of what they're trying to overcome throughout the course of this book. So I had been anticipating a Beck's story for many of the books. I don't really know why. He just kept being this recurring character that I was kind of interested into getting to, and honestly I felt like this was kind of a letdown. I think I just wanted more excitement and passion for him. This book deals with heavy topics, but I felt like most of the people, a lot of the humans and, you know, his other Sakui people were kind of a little too hard on Beck. Like his intentions were selfish, but like the consequences were okay, but like there's also drama there too. So I did like to see these two together by the end of the book, but I wanted more tension and like longing throughout instead of dealing with all of this like trauma survival stuff that we got. Hi, sorry for a different camera angle, maybe. I had to make room on my camera, and now I have 45 minutes to play with, so I don't have to talk so fast. No, just kidding. We're going to speed through this. So the next book that I finished in March is called Sure Thing. This is by Jana Aston. I read this on Kindle Unlimited. So in this book, our main female character is Violet. She is sort of the like good twin, the quieter twin, kind compared to her sister Daisy, and she tries to be bold by having this awesome one night stand with this British guy, Jennings, only to find out that he turns out to be a guest on this week-long vacation tour that Violet is giving, while Violet is having to pretend to be her sister Daisy. So Jennings turns out to be secretly one of the CEOs on this tour of the tour company that he's taking the tour on, and he is trying to work out how to tell Daisy that he is her boss's boss. But then like things that she's saying aren't adding up to her personnel file, and the questions are mounting. So I liked the start to this. It's a like fake identity premise, but I had a lot of issues with the writing. There was just a couple times when it felt kind of jarring, and I'm not sure if those were like Britishisms that were happening. Violet's character felt kind of erratic and overall juvenile to me. I liked the premise that she was trying to pretend to be Daisy, but then, she had also given Jennings a fake name that was, I think, like Rose or something. She was sticking with this flower theme. So some of the erraticness could be explained away by this convoluted sort of fake identity situation, but I was annoyed that Jennings found her unexpectedness to be so alluring, and it just felt like there wasn't enough like emotional development. They were really only together for the one night stand plus the week, and I kind of just lost interest over the course of the book, and I didn't understand why in the end the person who made the grand gesture had to make the grand gesture. It wrapped up too quickly. There was a happy ever after and a traditional romance epilogue. So this one just was very forgettable. I had to reread my notes right now just to even remember what had happened. The next thing that I read in March was a webcomic, actually, and this is Punderworld by Linda Sejic. Sorry if I butchered that. This is a sort of digital comic, like I just said. I originally saw art for this like on Pinterest years ago. And anyway, we read it for one of my book clubs that I'm in, where we primarily read graphics and comics. And so Punderworld is the story of Hades and Persephone. It's sort of, this volume is them pining for each other and then officially meeting each other. I really, really enjoyed this art style. I found it really dynamic and like emotional, and there was a lot of transparency happening here. I especially enjoyed the crowns that both Persephone and her mother wear and how they reflect their like emotional state at the time. This felt like a strong start to the Persephone and Hades story, and I did appreciate the attention that was given to the other major characters who are also Greek gods, and also like what those Greek gods represent or kind of had been known for, but this still focused on Hades and Persephone, and it felt sort of like a modern way to tell this very ancient story. So I do want to continue with the next volume, and I hope that there's a lot more to read, but I don't think there currently is yet. The next book that I finished in March was called Moonlighter. This was by Sarina Bowen, and I read the ebook for this. And I've read other books with Sarina Bowen and Al Kennedy. This might have been my first only Sarina Bowen book, but in this book, the main male character is Eric. He is a professional hockey player, and he is recruited by his brother, who has a security business, to be a bodyguard for someone who they knew in their childhood, Alex. Alex is a big-time CEO. She's a knockout. She has a abusive ex, and she's also 3 months pregnant. So Eric accompanies Alex on her business trip to Hawaii, and they are having a lot of sparks fly to sexual tension, and they give into this, but then there are like espionage and threats and medical stuff is happening that ends up shortening the trip and kind of dampening their feelings. And so a few months later, they end up reconnecting when he is helping out again, and he is determined to show Alex how much he cares for her. To me, this book was good, but not great. There was this like tech element because that's what Alex's company was all about. And there was a sort of mild mystery element. And these were fine, but they kind of detracted from the romance and took away time from when I wanted the two characters to be bonding and building up their connection. I do say that with a caveat though, because I'm glad to have her job be important to her and actually take up some of her time, especially as she's a CEO. So it like needed to be important in her life. And so I think that's a hard line to walk to navigate work being important to the character and be a part of the character and they're taking up time on the page, but also like not getting in the way. I did appreciate the complexity present of the situation. Both of them were having these important, intense jobs. They both have a lot of time commitments, and Alex has this pregnancy. However, I didn't feel like those were discussed by our main characters in sort of any context of what that would mean for a romantic relationship together. So this was good, but I was like mostly, my favorite character was Eric's brother, actually. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series or not. The last book that I finished in March was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. I read this as part of the Sugar and Spice book club. Check out the description for links to some videos in the Discord for the Sugar and Spice book club. It's great because we read romance. So Hook, Line, and Sinker, the main character is Hannah, and she suggests that the movie that she is working on with many other people, be set in the seaside town of Westport, which is the location of the first book. And since Hannah's sister Piper does not have room at her house for Hannah to stay, Hannah will have to stay with Fox, with whom she met in the first book and has been staying in touch and actually has developed a real friendship through text and stuff. So everyone in Westport warns her to not sleep with Fox, to watch out for him because he's such a playboy, etc. Even as she has sort of started to develop some feelings for him and is definitely attracted to him. And Fox doesn't want to hurt Hannah, and he really thinks that a lot of his worth, or most of his worth, is tied to his, sexual prowess. So this is their romance and how they kind of work through some of those issues and ends in a happily ever after. So I liked watching Fox have to work through his issues. I saw some reviews that said that his issues were not like worthwhile, not very traumatic, not really that much of a problem, but I liked how he was carrying his own baggage, and I really enjoyed how Hannah supported him and tried to reinforce sort of good practice thoughts and habits to change to try to get him out of that mindset. I did think she was maybe playing therapist a teeny little bit too much, but I did like how they worked together to kind of reach a healthy spot surrounding his like mental health and sort of their mental health together. I also liked the subplot of Hannah connecting to her father via the sea shanties and the music. And this was a source of connection between Hannah and Fox, was this music. And I wanted more there. I felt like there was a lot of groundwork that had been conveyed at the start of the book as happening before the start of the book. And so I wanted just more connection on page between Hannah and Fox, because it felt like we were really counting on that emotional development that happened between books 1 and 2. So I liked the writing and the steam, and there was good vibes. I just wanted a little bit more from the book. There were 3 books that I decided to stop reading, DNF'd, in the first quarter of the year, but I think I'm going to do a separate video on books that I have DNF so far this year, because I've been a lot more willing to set things down and walk away. So I think I'm going to make a separate video with my DNF books. But we are finally made it to April. Let's dive right in. The first book that I finished in April was No Exit. This is by Taylor Adams, and I read the ebook because this was for the movie night book club. I will leave links down in the description. So the premise of this book is our main character is Darby. She is a college student, and she is stuck at a remote rest stop during a blizzard because she can't travel further because there's a blizzard. And then she sees a child that's being kept in the back of a van, and she realizes that at least one of the other adults at the rest stop with her is a kidnapper. So she tries to recruit help amongst those other adults because she thinks she's figured out who the bad guy is, but turns out that there's more than one bad guy. I guess that's kind of a slight spoiler, but whatever. And then so throughout the course of the book, you know, she is having to fight for her life and outwit the bad guys and try to rescue the kid. So I did find this as an entertaining and fast-paced thriller. I liked the setting, and the atmosphere was really vivid and added to sort of that creep factor for her being stuck in this no cell reception, stuck in a blizzard, remote location with these strangers. All of that really contributed to the creep factor. I also felt like having one of the bad guys' point of views layered in also upped that creepiness factor and kind of left me somewhat questioning throughout the book about what he might be able to accomplish. And yeah, I had a good time kind of reading the book. I'm not sure of its long-term memorability, and I don't really think for me it would have very much rereadability. But the Movie Night Book Club then watched the adaptation that is pretty new, and I felt like overall the adaptation was pretty decent. I wasn't really sure why the adaptation chose to put Darby in Narcotics Anonymous. I don't know if that was trying to make her unreliable or sympathetic, but I did feel like the show or the movie took the gore level down a little bit and also kind of took a little bit of agency away from both the child in the book who needed rescuing and Darby herself. So overall, I did think the adaptation was good, but never as good as the book. The second book that I finished in April was The Never King by Nikki St. Crowe. I read the ebook of this, and I actually have a book review video on this book. So check out the video. I'll link it up in the cards and down in the description. But in summary, this is a Peter Pan inspired dark romance. Winnie Darling is our main female character, and she thinks that her mother is mentally ill until she herself is taken by Peter Pan to the magical realm of Neverland, and Winnie uses her feminine wiles to entice the Lost Boys and Pan while they're sort of threatening her. I don't know, this island is magical and mysterious, and there's some sort of plot that's going on with the Fae and Pan's missing shadow. And so in summary, I didn't really like the writing. I didn't find it very effective in a structural sense. I didn't feel like there was like follow through on these like threats from the guys. The inclusion of the Fae just felt like it was like, let's put Fae in here because that's popular. And to me, this felt more like erotica than dark romance. So check out the review if you want to know more on my thoughts on The Never King. The next book I finished was Before We Were Yours by Liese Wingate. I listened to the audio of this, and this is a literary fiction book for one of my real life book clubs. In this book, we follow two point of views. One is set in 1939 in Memphis, and we follow 12-year-old Rill, and she and her younger siblings are taken off of their houseboat and put into an orphanage where there are sort of abused and separated in mysterious ways, and some are adopted out, and they were like stolen off this houseboat. It's not because the parents were dead. Rill and one of her sisters are adopted together, and they try to return home to this houseboat, and drama happens. I don't want to spoil stuff. The other point of view is Avery in a sort of contemporary storyline, and she is trying to learn about her grandmother's history while she questions her own choices. And throughout the course of the book, you have to wonder what her grandmother has to do with Rill and Rill's storyline. I definitely felt like Rill's point of view was much more interesting and entertaining and action-packed than Avery's, though it was tough to read because this was inspired by real-life people and history with the Tennessee Children's Homes, this organization that stole children and like trafficked them essentially. Avery's point of view felt very like women's fiction to me, with a lot of filler and sort of low stakes and low tension. And it was really hard to care about her, especially in juxtaposition to Rill, who was having this dramatic, traumatic life. And so I just did feel like a little bit let down by the end of the book, but I really did enjoy this story overall, and I definitely felt like Rill's point of view carried a lot of the book. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrun. Listen to this on audio. It is a contemporary male-male romance. One of the main male characters is Indian American, and I listened to this on audio, and I'm pretty sure the narrator called him Dave, but it's spelled Dev. So Dave Deshpande is a producer on a reality TV show that is called Ever After, and it's essentially like The Bachelor but with a fairy tale theme. And Dave is tasked with wrangling an amazing performance out of the Bachelor, who is super steadily but super awkward, and his name is Charlie. Over the course of the show and the season, Dave and Charlie start to fall for each other, and they are both dealing with abundant mental health issues and sexual identity exploration. Dave is out and gay, but Charlie is ostensibly heterosexual, which is why he's come on the show, even though it's really he came on the show to improve his social standing and his image. I found this book to be sweet and entertaining, dramatic but funny, and I really appreciated how this like secret dating trope was used in this book, because they're having to hide the fact that they're starting to have feelings for each other. I did also appreciate the pacing of this book. I feel like I enjoyed how it took its time to get to the I love you stage of things. There was good emotional development along the way. I do have a controversial opinion, which is that I think that there were honestly kind of too many LGBT characters, in that it felt like there was constantly many open and frank discussions about sexuality and gender identity and all of those things, and it was because like almost every character felt like was identified as LGBT, and it was just kind of like a lot happening. And there was also a heck of a lot of like positive mental health support, which is amazing, but also like none of these people were therapists, and just every single person in this book was LGBT and was on medication and going to therapy, and it just was kind of like, it just seemed like a lot. And I did see one review that said that, or one reviewer complained that this was not very good Indian American representation. So I did really enjoy this book as a contemporary romance and as a fun story. So just kind of take some of those ideas with a grain of salt. The next book that I read was Mr. Bad Influence by M.A. Foster. Whew, I'm glad this was on Kindle Unlimited, because I did not like it. The premise of this book is that our main female character is Parker, and she finds out in the first couple pages that her fiance is cheating on her, so she calls off the wedding and flies to Vegas with her gal pals. And there she hooks up with Cooper, and they wake up married because they're in Vegas. And so they decide to give the relationship a try, and they both have to like learn to trust each other, and they embrace a possible pregnancy between the two of them. This is a 70-page novella, and I felt like it was just too fast. There was no development. The I love yous came way too fast. I did not like the writing style. I did not care about the characters. The second they're married, they stop using condoms. In my opinion, Parker was sort of worse than Cooper. Parker was really abrasive and dramatic. She was constantly name-calling the woman that her fiance had like cheated on her with, and she held these double standards against that woman, but not really had issues with her fiance who cheated on her. I also felt like she was not classy. She gets in like both verbal and physical altercations with both her ex-fiance and that woman, and like it just was like, what the heck is happening? Cooper, it just was in insta lust. He tells her multiple times throughout the books that he's really just in it for her tits. And I just felt like he kind of bordered on controlling and creepy. And like both of them are just so pro baby with this total stranger. This book didn't work for me. It was a novella. I didn't like it. Just did not enjoy my reading experience. The next book I read was also surprisingly short, though not quite a novella, I don't think. The Dragon's Bride by Katee Robert. I had the ebook of this, and again was a read for the Sugar and Spice book club. So the main female character in this book is Briar Rose. She makes a deal with a demon to get away from her abusive husband, and so for 7 years she is agreeing to this deal, and then she is auctioned as a bride to this dragon-like alien guy from another dimension, Saul, who has 2 penises. He is clear pretty much from the get-go that his goal is to get an heir out of this arrangement, and she's clear that she does not want to conceive, and so he gives her like a birth control magical amulet, and then they get down to sexy business. I wanted a little bit more world development and emotional development. I hadn't realized how short this book was when I was, when I first got it. Briar has like zero culture clash, and she's just super gung-ho about having all this hot alien sex like on day 2. I did feel like the smut was pretty spicy, but there was no... Here, I'll put it on screen. When you have 2 penises, like, this is what I was expecting. I mean, come on. There was also this element of like, Briar was like, no, I don't want to really breed with you, but breeding is my kink. And so like that element just was like jarring to me. And ultimately there's sort of a consent issue here because like, well, she didn't say no. And I'm like, it just made me kind of uncomfortable. This book just didn't really like work for me. I felt like it was kind of steamy, but I just wanted a lot more out of it. And the character I enjoyed the most was honestly the like demon guy, Azazel. So I don't know if I'm going to continue this series or not by Katee Robert. The next book that I read was also by Sarina Bowen. This was my second Sarina Bowen in this video. This is Bittersweet, and I listened to the audiobook. This is the first book in the True North series. Our main male character in this book is Griffin. He is running and working on his family's orchard farm, and his college crush stumbles back into his life. Audrey is a chef, but she is stuck working this job where she's trying to procure high quality local produce for the city restaurants. So sparks fly between Griffin and Audrey as she's trying to make these deals. And she also tries to make an arrangement with him to purchase the cider that he is brewing. And she gets to know his family happily ever after, contemporary romance. I felt like this was a cute book. I really enjoyed the narration for both narrators in the audiobook. I did feel like the book was kind of long. It just felt like we weren't making very much progress. I did feel like Griffin was complex and well-rounded to me. I felt like he was definitely still carrying this torch for Audrey, and I would have preferred seeing a little bit more of him falling for her now. I did also really enjoy how like into her he was during his point of views. That was refreshing to read. And it also like was just juxtaposed with Audrey's point of views. And I felt like it was actually kind of hard to discern how she felt about him, even when we were in her head. She would think about him, but then she would very easily get distracted. So she just felt like a little flighty to me. I felt like it took a lot of the book before we finally got to see her opinions on whether or not she actually cared for this guy. I also didn't super love the ending and sort of like how one of the characters' dreams was sort of changed so that they could like be with the other character. But it did feel like a good setup for the series, and I would continue with the series. I'm considering continuing with the True North series. The next book is Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness. This is by Kristen Radtke. I had the ebook of this and was, again, for that comic club that I'm part of. This is a nonfiction graphic novel / memoir dealing with loneliness in contemporary times, especially in America. I found this book to be really hard-hitting for me. I think I have thought for a long time that a lot of people are really lonely, and I've experienced that myself, over the last number of years. I have a lot of highlights and quotes throughout this book from the text. A quote that I wrote down here that I quite liked was, "If trust is the basis for the bonds we form, then its eradication can almost certainly ensure our separation." That really hit home. I feel like there was a lot of big topics covered in this book. There's also a big chunk of this book that is spent on the psychologist Harry Harlow, both his life and his research. And there's definitely a lot of inclusion about some of the experiments he did, which were very cruel and are very tough to read about. And some of the people in my book club just couldn't handle that element. So go into that with some content warnings on, depression and isolation and like cruelty toward animals in the name of psychology and science. Some of the reviewers basically said that they felt like this book was kind of depressing and repetitive and lacked strong points by the author. And I do think that there were structurally some issues, and especially in the transitions. But overall, to me, this book was a rumination on the topic and a discussion of the topic and of the research the author did. So I felt like it sparked really great discussion in our book club, and I want to purchase this book because it rang so true to me and was so hard-hitting. So I fully recommend CQ. The next book that I read was also a graphic novel. This one is a bit more lighthearted, and this is The Girl from the Sea. The author is Molly Knox Ostertag. This is a YA book. And so we follow one of our main characters is Morgan. She is 15 and she's secretly gay and or questioning her sexuality. And she can't wait to leave her small hometown island and like live her true self. One night she is rescued from drowning by this mysterious girl named Katee, and Morgan kisses Katee sort of in a moment of recklessness. And it turns out that Katee is a Selkie, and now after this kiss, she's able to walk on land in her human form and have shed her seal skin. So Morgan starts to ditch her friends and hang out with Katee and sort of gets to try on and gets a taste of like living her true self life until Katee has a mission for the both of them. I don't want to give away any more of this book. It's really great. You should definitely read it. I felt like the story was super cute, sweet, and also bittersweet. I really loved the color palettes throughout this book and the art style. I felt like the emotions were really clearly broadcasted across all of the characters. I also liked the inclusion of the myth elements surrounding the Selkie and felt that it was appropriate for, YA audience. I did want a little bit more characterization from Katee because she was just so mysterious, but I really liked her vibe. And I really liked the friend group too. There was this inclusion of these chat conversations and it felt more contemporary and realistic. And Morgan had a lot going on with her family that was also sort of included on the periphery. There were big changes to her family structure and her brother was acting out. And to me, this was just brought a level of like realism and relatability to the character and balanced out the fantasy elements. But cute story, would totally recommend, and sweet sapphic romance. I did read a few volumes of manga, and I think I'm going to, I started a vlog as I was doing those. I don't know if that'll ever become a thing. Keep an eye out for that. I feel like it's been done already, but I don't really care. I'm enjoying it, and I want to kind of document me reading this series of manga, so keep an eye out for that coming soon. And just to round things out, I realized that was 19 books, so I'm going to talk about one more book just to make it a nice round 20 books that I discuss in this video. And the next book that I read in April is actually a reread for me, and I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, ending with a whimper. This book is by Sarah J. Maas. I listened to the audio and I have the physical book, so I read them in tandem. This is a reread for me, and I feel like everyone already knows the summary, but main character is Feyre. She kills a fairy creature that was disguised as a wolf, and so she is like hauled off to serve her sentence for killing this fae as a guest in like luxury and safety. I don't know. She's spending her like sentence in the Eternal Spring Court that is under the High Lord Tamlin, who is a fae man. And so once she kind of settles down, she falls for Tamlin, but then, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to really, if you care to be spoiled, sorry, you're not going to find it here. For me, this book has a good start, a long, boring middle, 60%, and then sort of a strong end. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling / is inspired by Beauty and the Beast. And I agree with many, many, many reviews out there that say that pretty much all the action of this book, it starts at the 75-80% mark and is in the end. So it makes it feel really imbalanced because it's all back heavy. I felt on this reread that Feyre was just like super lucky. She survives everything she tries, and she's just like super lucky all the time. A controversial opinion, potentially, is that I don't think Tamlin is quite as bad as everyone says here in this first book. I know that in the second book, which I have read, he definitely exhibits very questionable behavior. But in this first book, I felt like he was just kind of like tragic and generic. And he's kind of going through some shit too. So I did see a couple of reviews that talked about how Amarantha was like over dramatic and overdone as an evil character, very like mustache twirly. And I agree with that, but also like I felt like she was very creepy and effective. So yeah. And the last thing I'll say is that it really made me laugh when I saw how many reviews people were like, oh, Akatar, so spicy. And I was just kind of like, okay. So yeah. So that was 20 books, catching up all of March and some of both February and April to try to get everybody caught up on some of the reads that I have done here in 2022. My plan is to put out a recent reads video soon with some of the other books that I to kind of finish out April, some of the most recent reads from April, and we're already a number of days into May, so I'm gonna have I'm still playing catch up. I'm always playing catch up on this channel. But if you have read any of the books that I talked about here, I would love to hear about your thoughts down in the comments. I would love to hear recommendations for anything that was sort of similar for books that I said that I liked, or I mean honestly, like kind of fight me on anything that I said that you didn't like. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.